Hello and welcome to one more episode of Know the Greaters. I'm Prasenjit Bhattacharya, co-founder and CEO at Great Manager Institute. With me, I have Sandeep Malhotra, our Chief Product Officer who heads product development and technology at Great Manager Institute. Welcome, Sandeep.
Thank you, PJ.
And it's such a wonderful opportunity for us to delve a little bit deeper into your journey and what a fantastic and interesting journey it is. I would just summarize the objectives of doing this is for our own people and for our other stakeholders to know you better, to know why you are at GMI, what are your aspirations, what has shaped you as a person, and what is your dream for yourself, and how can GMI be a significant part in that dream for you. Before I start, do you have any questions, Sandeep?
No, let's go.
Okay, brilliant. It would be very interesting for our viewers to know the story of your early life, your childhood, your upbringing, family, education, uh, right up to your marriage. So, if you can give us a summary of your early life, and and then we shall talk about what have been some of your turning points. Sandeep?
My early life was uh, very different from what it is today, or it was very simple. I was a very quiet, shy child. Um I think most people around me uh, knew me as the person who was constantly breaking toys and tinkering with it by himself. That's what I did in most of my time. I think I liked physics and electrics. I, I used to play around with toys, break them, make something. I loved reverse engineering things. I think once the story in my family is the once I my dad took me to an amusement park in Delhi where I grew up. This was very popular amusement park in those days in Delhi called Appuhar. Uh, and for the first time, I saw something called an aerial ropeway. Um and I observed it for a very long while. My dad didn't take me to it. I just saw it from distance. He was scared. Uh, so I saw it and I came back home. And then I started thinking about how do I recreate it. And by next day's evening, when my parents returned from work, not they were not very pleased to see what happened, but I had broken the only Walkman we had in the house, because the Walkman had a thing which moved like a motor to move the cassette in those days, and I surmounted a pen on the top of it so that it rotates, and put a disc from my mom's swing kit so that the thread moves, and I put two of them, and then I had a working model of a aerial ropeway at the cost of the only Sony Walkman we had in those days at home, which my parents' cousins who used to live in the US had gifted him in those days, right? So that's the kind of childhood I had. I was mostly by myself, playing with toys, not so much with other people. Um, and then something strange happened. While I loved uh, playing with toys and electronics, but I didn't do really well at school in academics. And I thought for the longest while that I am not good at it. Uh, and then when it was time to go to college, I saw myself writing entrance exams to get admission to different colleges. So I was part of these coaching institutes that would prepare kids in Delhi for these entrance exams. Uh, for the first time, I noticed that when you're practicing papers in the classroom in those coaching centers, we were expected to finish the questions and raise our hands when we are done. So one of the first few days, I finished something and I raised my hand, and then I looked up and then I noticed that I'm the only one who has raised the hand. So I put it back down. I thought I've gotten it wrong. This happened a few times, and then I started learning that there is something called reasoning, logical reasoning, numerical, etc., all of those subjects that I'm actually very good at. So what I started learning which was very surprising for me, is uh, that there is something that I'm good at, and I think that was the beginning of the next leg when I started taking education more seriously, because I think something gave me the confidence that I can do it. Then I think that was the beginning of when I started thinking about work or career, or doing well outside of enjoying something that I was doing. Uh, so I think that was one big turning point. I incidentally got into some good colleges, and then uh, by the virtue of being in better places, I was surrounded by a lot of interesting people, uh, and I think then it was just inspiration all around. By the virtue of being in the right company, you compete against people who've already invested a lot in themselves, and you grow. So I think that would be a big high level summary of coming to where I am from my childhood.
With the kind of fascination that you have in tinkering around and creating stuff, the breaking your Walkman being one example, uh, one would have thought that maybe engineering would have been your first choice, or maybe you could even you may like to be a scientist, but you moved in a slightly different trajectory. So tell us about your higher studies, and what prompted you to to select the line that you selected.
So when we had to, at a later stage in schooling, choose between subjects, science was reserved for people who have scored high enough, and I never did well in academics. Much later I realized that the reason for that is very different. It's not because I don't enjoy studying or learning, it's because I had terrible handwriting and I have really, really poor rote learning skills. I just cannot memorize. I understand concepts, but I still cannot memorize things. I make connections and I have to go back to. And I mean, what has also happened is that by the time I came to the world of work, the world of work had changed. It didn't require me to memorize. We had so much more technology, and I think some of those skills became very, very redundant. I All I need to know is remember one name, one book, one author, one word, and I can just go online and collect everything back. So I never memorized. I could never get myself to memorize anything, whether it's equations, whether it's formulas, whether it's tables. So I did really, really bad. Fortunately, I never had to skip 1 year, but I never scored very well. I scored average. I never scored in 90s. I would always score in 60s and 70s and just manage to get to the next level. So I think one, I wasn't confident that I'll be able to do something which is academically challenging and competitive in a way. At that point in time, that's what I thought. That's what I felt. Second, I didn't even have the option to study science in school after a certain stage when you had to choose between different subjects. So that's how I ended up studying what I studied first, formally.
And which was
which
what did
was
you?
which was commerce. Interestingly, I nevertheless continued with math. Uh, this is another very interesting story of my life. Uh, Within commerce as well, in our schools, we had option in those days to study commerce subjects with math or without math. And without math, there was an alternative which was called information practices, basics of computers, uh, which was considered to be easier. Uh, After first few months of being in that standard, and remember which standard was. I'm assuming it was 11th. Oh yeah, I think it was 11th. My math teacher decided to throw about 5 kids from math outside to IP. She wanted to force these 5 kids to switch to IP because she felt that we would bring down the class performance. Incidentally, what I had also heard of those days, which in those days, which was incorrect, but that if you end up studying in that education system without math as a subject, your options are limited. There are certain kind of colleges and courses that you cannot apply for, etc. So even though I had no reason to want to stick to math, it's not that I enjoyed it a lot in those days as much as I do now. But just to keep my career safe and keep my options open, I wanted to stick to it, and it was also a matter of uh, pride that you are continuing with the better side of the commerce subjects. Uh, Incidentally, the one of my sisters was a very good friend with that teacher. One of my cousins, I called her in. I mean, I made my mom call her in, saying that, hey, this is what has happened. Deepa is asking Sandeep to leave math. Can you please request her? So of the 5 kids, 4 were still thrown out. I think she hated the idea. My parents had to promise her that they would engage enough private tutors. She would not have to spend more time on me. They would engage enough private tutors to bring me up to speed, and that I will not bring her the class average down. She wasn't very happy about the decision, but she had to take it just to sort of just because her friend had requested her. So yeah, that's how I ended up still staying in touch with that. And then I think today many times when I go visit my sister, they're neighborhood friends. So she's somewhere around. I have this urge to go to her house. She must be much older now, and I don't want to do that to a teacher, but I get that urge to go to her place and tell her that I work in data science now, and it's not that I didn't know how to learn. It's who you didn't know how to teach. But I guess it's not about her. It's about the schooling system that I was part of.
I went to an alternative school for my daughter, and the first words which were inscribed on the reception was, if I don't learn the way you teach, teach me the way I learn. And that was so powerful. And you talked about almost 2 turning points, in your own life. You talked about, the fact that you had uh, this whole complete metamorphosis in your self-image and confidence when you started giving those papers in the entrance test, and you suddenly realized that when it comes to numerical, logical reasoning kind of tests, you are actually very good, even though you have never scored really well in your academic courses up to that point in time. And the second was that a teacher who wants to throw you out, and in subsequently in life, you actually have done amazingly well in exactly those areas, and perhaps in more evolved areas. Tell us, in terms of your life right up to education, and I'm going to go to your post-graduation experience in a minute. What have been the major influences? Was it your dad who was a major influence when he took you to Apughar? Where, would you read books, authors, or I know there are negative influences like the teacher who was trying to throw you out, but who have influenced your thoughts, your values, and shaped you as a person?
Yeah, I think there are many people, but uh, mostly it's events and books that I would call out. If I have to call out things that I remember the most when I think about that question, uh, uh, why did I want to get into a decent college in the first place? Why did I sign up for uh, those coaching classes in spite of feeling that I'm not really good at acads? The answer is very funny. Uh, I had a girlfriend in those days, and as a teenager, what was going on in my mind was that at some point in time I would want to get married. So what would I do? What would I go and how will I present myself? I must get into a good college. That was the simplest motivation. Of course, life moved on that front in many ways, many times after that. But there was a motivation. That event was a motivation that I have to be there for myself in some ways. That's how I ended up uh, trying to figure out how to crack this college problem by signing up for those coaching exams. Much later, I discovered I was good at it. I got through colleges in different cities. We moved. And I think later on, it just one thing led to another. And I think at some point in time, I found myself working in marketing related roles. And that's when I discovered psychology, first from a consumer psychology lens. And I think one book led to another. And I think over time, I've been, my thinking, my life in many ways has been shaped by several books that I've come across. I guess I always was somebody who liked think deeply, but I also with the books I bumped into got some more material to think more deeply, some more context, some more thinking of other people, which I would say has shaped me the most. Of all this.
So you talked about consumer psychology. You talked about very basic first level of motivation, and as the saying goes, uh, behind every successful man, there is a woman which didn't work out for him. Or I'm forgetting the exact saying, but uh, tell us a little bit more about what kind of books, when it comes to behaviors, consumer psychology. If you can just give us a sense of what are those, what kind of books, and any one or two examples of authors who have influenced you.
Yeah, I think right in the beginning, as I was learning more about marketing and therefore consumer psychology, I got introduced to psychology in general. And I think I came across several books from the space of subjective well-being, science of happiness. But I think one book that has made the most amount of impact on how I think and not just think about work, but how I think about life is this book named Flow by Mihail Csikszentmihalyi. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation of his name.
Yeah.
It's one of those books that I keep with me, and I have no idea about the number of times I've read it. Every time I am facing any stressful life event, or if I am confused, my thinking is muddled, I go back to it, even though it's not a motivation book of any kind. It is an academic book, but I think if there is only one word that I can leave back, and I can popularize it, would be just the title of that book and what it stands for.
Yes, and for so many people, work is a bit of a drudgery, and yet there are lucky few for whom it's not just their passion, but they can also experience a state of flow. It is like an artist when he's one with the art. You did talk about the fact that your higher education brought you in contact with some really great quality peers, and subsequently in your work life, and we'll come to that in a minute, you would have interacted with some really good quality peers, and I could sense that the quality of people around you has also inspired you to give your best, be who you are. uh, Without giving names, would you like to talk about 2 3 people who you have worked with or you have studied with, who seem to have shaped you quite a bit?
Yeah, I think, I remember them very, very clearly, because I think that there was a big both motivation and they serve both as motivation and as guidance in a way, even though they may not have been my guides, but just watching them, observing them, trying to do things like them, try to be more like them, has shaped in many ways what I've become. So I remember then, by the time I made it to college, which was a great college for what were my expectations from myself at that stage in life. I was suddenly surrounded by a lot of people who had done really well in school, etc. Before their college life, and I remember my dad being saying this to me while he was dropping me to this different city to stay back there for this college. And uh, before he left me there, he tried to convince me to instead join another college in Delhi. Uh, he felt that would be better because I would stay at home. But then finally, when I expressed to him that this is what I want to pick between the options I have, he said, "Okay, now that you're staying back here, I want to leave you with a message." And he meant it in a very very kind way. He didn't mean it in a way of looking expecting less from me, but he wanted me to be safe and feel okay. So he said that. You something to the effect of that you're one of the last people to have made it here in order of those lists, etc. They would have list 1, list 2, list 3 of admission. um, do not feel too bad if you don't do so well here, because this is already, he meant it like, hey, don't stress too much, this is great, this is good enough, right? He didn't mean to say that I don't trust you, I don't think you have more potential. He meant it in a way that this is good enough. Be content with this much and don't feel too bad. Don't compare too much, etc. Um, but I think comparing comes naturally to me for good and for bad. So I did compare, but I think I managed to compare in ways where I found role models in people. I immediately figured that now that I made it here, what is the best I can do here, and that wasn't in the classrooms for me. I figured that instead of trying to do well there, I should do well in extracurriculars and projects that happen, and I should learn other things instead of trying to do really well at a catch. Because again, the catch was still following the same structure. It was not based on comprehension. It was not based on demonstration of understanding. It was rote learning, writing exams. So I found a lot of people around who were doing really well in the kind of projects they were picking up, initiatives they were taking. Uh, so I pushed myself to hang around with them. I joined clubs that pushed me to spend more time with them, just watch them in action, try to do what they're doing, learn from them. I think I made friends in college after that, in my higher education, during my MBA times. I was one of the youngest ones to have made it there. Most people had worked for a few years, so therefore, before MBA, therefore they were older than me. So I almost had brother-like figures, father-like figures there, who were very kind. Uh, I think that's where I learned how to take care of somebody else, because somebody took care of me really well. A bunch of people took care of me really well. Some of the best friends I made till date, who uh, travel around the world just to spend time with me or help me with something that I might need after more than a decade. I think those are the people who have really left a mark.
And you are referring, of course, to one of the most well-known institutes when it comes to brand and communications, and that was an area of specialization for you vis-a-vis the studies that you did. And you have since then been largely working in professional services, except one or two product companies in between. Is there anything that draws you towards product and professional services companies, or a combination of these two, and you haven't gone to financial services, you haven't tried out manufacturing? uh, what is it about the kind of work that, and maybe you can even take Great Manager Institute, or you have worked with Great Place to Work as examples. uh, why do you want like to work in these kind of settings?
Uh, I think now I have words to answer this question, and didn't, and I was behaving like this earlier as well, without necessarily knowing why am I choosing what I'm choosing. But I think now I maybe understand it more deeply. Um, for variety of reasons, work means more to me. it should, I crave that it should amount to more than just making a living. Uh, so I've always felt inclined towards work that I can find more meaning in, uh, for what it does or doesn't do, uh, for people it serves, for markets, for segments, for audiences, for society at large. Not that I have answers to that question, which are uh, rooted in any fixed morals, but it should mean something more than a source of living for me, in my meaning system. So I think that has drawn me to the kind of work I have done. I don't think I associate so much with classifications like product or services of different kinds. Uh, I should. Uh, I think I'm more motivated to spend time on tasks that I feel are significant, from the perspective of the larger population. So I think that is what has drawn me to the kind of work I've been drawn to.
Sandeep, talking about work, one of the things which is very distinctive about you, and I know because I have had the privilege of working with you in two different organizations, is that you seem to be an example of somebody who is not a jack of all, but who seems to be, who can very easily become a master of all, in the sense that you started with conferences and events and went to marketing and brand, and in between you did business process, re-engineering and improvement. You created a product company. You worked as a uh, as a uh, product officer in a well-known brand. You at GMI initially helped us with our brand and marketing, and without batting an eyelid, you started not only working but heading our product and technology team. And this is something which is very difficult for most people to actually imagine, that how can these kind of transitions actually happen? Isn't there such a thing as specialization, core competence, and my niche and my career? Tell me, what drives you to take these leaps?
I think I enjoy learning, uh, learning of a certain kind, which requires me to wrestle with concepts, theoretical concepts. Somebody else would enjoy learning how to navigate relationships, how to influence people, how to bring people together, how to keep people together, which is a different kind of learning. Uh, Picking up a subject which I don't understand, and immersing myself in it to the extent that I start making sense of it, and then can simplify it for myself and then for others, comes more naturally to me as compared to uh, many other valuable uh, kinds of learning. So that's been, I think that's been uh, very easy for me or natural for me to sort of move from one subject to another. Uh, I think initially it happened because I was optimizing. I was trying to figure out what's a better thing to spend more time with. Or, you know what, I started working on marketing, but you know what, right now there is a project in available in process reengineering. Would I enjoy this more? So I was sampling experiences to find something which might be an even better choice from as compared to what I've landed with. So initially, it came from that jumping across different domains came from a need to uh, try to find the ideal one. But over time, I also learned that one of the things that is my strength is being able to combine things. And I think that's what I learned in kitchen first when I combined recipes. and then I learned it outside, that when I learn two different subjects, I naturally find how can I combine them together. And then I felt that there is value in, to some extent, playing at the intersection of a few domains, as far as I have enough depth in a few to be able to combine them. But if I don't have that much depth, then just learning them for the sake of enjoying them won't necessarily lead to an output. So I think it's something that I continue to try to tame even today, and keep that in some kind of a balance, so that I do get an opportunity to combine things, and therefore do not spread myself way too thin either. So I think it's something that I've learned over time, that that there is some amount of breadth I can benefit from having, as far as it does not come at the cost of uh, the depth that's needed to be able to combine them.
Okay, so I think I'm going to get into another section now. This is more like rapid fire, but the answer is not yes or no. The answer is just uh, maybe in one or two lines and very quickly. Uh, is it okay to work 90 hours week if you are very passionate about what you are doing, or are you really harming yourself in the long term by doing it?
Yeah, I think my personal view on this is, there is nothing called work, there is nothing called life. Work life, there is neither of them is true. It's just, life is filled with tasks. You enjoy them or you don't. It's your choice, as far as you remain healthy, and you can afford to remain healthy. You can work as many hours. You can work or enjoy, whatever you call it. Ancient human beings perhaps spent their entire day doing something that they didn't call work, which was to support their existence. We have labeled it as work, but uh, and we've also labeled certain things as leisure, which one can also say is work.
And we have portrayed a negative impression about work, and therefore we said, I'm going to compensate you because you have done something that you should not be doing, and therefore you deserve compensation. And I think this is a fascinating debate. Quick question number two is, if you were to choose between making enough money in a few years not to worry about money for the rest of your life, and doing very meaningful work, which may not give you enough money during the same point in time, what would be your choice?
Yeah, I think very interesting question. I continue to wrestle with this every day, even today. I think what I tell myself I should be choosing is the first one. What I do see myself choosing again and again is the second one. So my behavior says that I will choose the second, even though I intellectually wonder what would life be like if I was capable of choosing the first one.
That's a very interesting question. And I often say that the only test of a person's passion, commitment, is to give him $1 million in his bank account and then tell him to keep coming to work, wake up at morning every day saying that I want to come to work, right? And but question number three, bad boss. If you have a good organization, you are enjoying your job, but if you have a bad boss, and I'm sure you have you have had experience of having bad bosses, would you leave the job, or do you have any tips on how to handle bad bosses?
Yeah, I think I would. I don't think I've ever accepted a bad boss. I think life is too precious for that, to spend so much of your time. Uh, so I would either try and change the situation, get a different manager in the same organization if I can, if I love the organization, or eventually if nothing's working out, I would never stick around and be surrounded by not just a manager, but anybody who's influencing my experience of work, who is toxic for me.
In today's context, if you had not done higher education, uh, would you prefer to do a business administration program for 2 years from a very good, well-known institute, or would you like to focus on actually doing some cutting-edge work?
Yeah, I think I've one of the things that I'm most proud of is I've convinced many young people from avoiding spending money and time on an MBA. I mean, that is not to say that there are no great B schools around there and it's worth nothing, but I think uh, nothing is more valuable than experience. And uh, there is a quote that I came across recently. I think Rajiv Bajaj shared it in one of the interviews. He also quoted somebody. I don't think he recalled who he quoted. He was referring to. He was answering a question about what he thinks about EV startups and these new age uh, founders. He said, "आपकी और हमारी तालीम में बहुत फर्क है. आपने उस्तादों से सीखा है और हमने हालातों से." I think I like that a lot. I think I've learned way more in life while working on projects than in classrooms. And but that's also I think how I learn more. But I also know people who've enjoyed classrooms more. So I don't know if there is a generalization, but I would always prefer to learn on projects.
Given an option, and assume that you have 20 plus years of experience, given an option of focusing on your career, becoming the CEO of the organization, deciding the destiny and the strategy, and making a big impact through the organization, and actually nurturing the people under you and maybe producing 5 other CEOs, maybe not in the same organization, but enabling them to be really, really successful professionally, but not becoming a CEO yourself. What would be your preferred option, the first or the second one?
I think it's a transition. I think I'm moving more towards being the second kind of a person, but I am currently somewhere in between. I think there are times when I notice myself wanting to be under the limelight, and there are times when I manage to enjoy helping others be in the limelight. So I think I'm somewhere in between right now.
The difference, crucial difference between relationships at work and relationships in your personal life, and even with the same person, it could be two different relationships. What is that crucial difference?
Yeah, I think at work, fairness tends to be somewhere around 50-50. And outside of work, the moment you ask that question, you've tried to calculate, you're gone.
So if I were to answer it in another way, in at work, there are mutual expectations, and outside of work, there is, if it's a relationship, there is 100% acceptance, and you are not casting aspersions. And a very interesting person once told me, at work, your glass is always half empty. It doesn't matter how good you are, but there is something more to be done. But in outside work, in your relationship, it's always half full, in the sense that you are very happy that you have uh, what you have in your glass. And I think that's a great way to end this particular section. Last question: GMI. What prompted you to join Great Manager Institute? And in a sense, you and I, we have worked before, so you know what you are getting into, and you have had other colleagues who you all know as well. And if GMI were to be successful uh, and become the dream company, company of your dreams for you, what do you see GMI doing, and what would be your role?
Yeah, I think again, GMI is trying to do something which is not a standard category. It is not picking up an existing market and trying to optimize it, while it's doing some of that as well, but it's primarily trying to focus on a mission, which is that can we enable more and more people to work with managers who bring out the best in them, who are more compassionate, more competent in different ways. I think if one thing that I would love to see at in my work, and therefore in organizations I work with, and that's GMI, uh, is to go beyond the manager at some point in time to the individual, because I feel that the motivation to change is strongest when it's about changing yourself, or if you're a parent. I think these are the two places where you have the strongest motivation to do something. uh, we are trying to uh, build that motivation among managers as well, but I think that's a hard one, and we will succeed to some extent. But I also wonder what we can do if we were to help individuals manage themselves versus needing a manager to manage them.
I think that's a wonderful note to end this conversation with. And I think this is being missed by most people, that the individual is at least 50% of the equation. And expecting that a great manager will do 100% of the work is unrealistic. And and the fact of the matter is that the great manager is also an individual, and therefore 50% of the work of the great manager is managing self. And therefore, how do we really, and friend of mine came and explained to me that now the science has told us what are those key tasks that can lead to your success. Let us say in a frontline sales kind of role, it also is able to tell you how to do those key tasks. It is still not able to tell us how do you really generate the motivation to keep doing it consistently, day on and day after day. And and I think this is a great note to end on. And I really like your example that you made about parents. And what I really find fascinating about the relationship between a parent and child, as opposed to any other relationship, is you never ever would you wake up and say, "Oh my God, today I don't feel like being a parent." It doesn't matter what is your motivation, what is your incentive, how good or bad is the child, and what is the child doing. You are a parent, and you are a parent for life. There is no such thing as getting a divorce from your son or your daughter. And I think that's such an amazing analogy, that when you are doing some work, you are doing a project, it is your baby. And if you feel like that, then in a sense, that is the relationship that is completely 100% uh, full acceptance. Thank you, Sandeep, for your time. It was such a pleasure knowing you uh, more, and I hope our viewers enjoy this conversation.
Well, thank you for having me for today's session.